Hi, I'm Erica Phillips. I'm a state policy editor with the Connecticut Mirror. I formerly covered economic development for the Connecticut Mirror up until a couple of months ago. So I am very into kind of Connecticut's business community, startup community, entrepreneurship in Connecticut, and that's why we're here. So this is our second installment of the series, This Could Work, and in which I sit down with some of Connecticut's most successful entrepreneurs to explore their origin stories, find out how they turned their first dollar, and most importantly, ask why Connecticut was the place to make it happen. Some of our future events in the series will be speaking with New Haven native and food entrepreneur Jason Sabachinsky of Haven Hot Chicken, if you're familiar with that brand, and Felicia Rubenstein, who is here tonight, who has launched the co-working space Haven in Darien, and that's a very cool community, so we're looking forward to hearing from her as well. But tonight, we have two excellent guests who have worked in close partnership all the way along their entrepreneurial journey, a journey that had its origin in a garage with many, many batches of home-brewed beer. Just a few years later, they're the proud owners of the world's largest purpose-built non-alcoholic brewery just up the road here in Milford. Welcome the founders of Athletic Brewing Company, Bill Shufelt and John Walker.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I want to start with kind of a big idea question. What I'm curious about is knowing that you're both athletes yourselves, let's talk about the ways that sports and beer have sort of intersected and overlapped in your lives. Long before Athletic Beer, the company was even a remote thought. John, I think I heard that your father used to crack a beer after a run, right?
Yeah, and I would not necessarily call myself an athlete.
Oh, no, I thought you were a runner. Oh, maybe
yeah, amateur athlete.
Oh, I see.
Nothing competitive. I keep my competition in the brew house.
Fair enough.
But yeah, no, I grew up, and I think early on, I grew up in food and beverage. My father had a restaurant here in Connecticut, 20-something years. So, I was familiar with like the bar scene and drinks and beverages, and beer was always around. Grew up in a bar. And he would go for runs occasionally and always come home and crack in duels. I remember standing there. I was like, why are you having a beer right after a run? He's like, oh, it's non-alcoholic. It's so replenishing. It feels great. Just use all this energy and it's just bringing me back to life. So that was my first exposure to beer.
And so, anyone who's gone for a run, that does make sense when you come back from a run, cracking a beer, very refreshing. Bill, how have these two things overlapped for you?
Similar to John, I'm very much a recreational athlete who I love sports. I love working out. I love aspiring to be healthier and a little bit healthier every year. And that intersects a lot with athletics, but I don't think I've been on a podium of any sort since I was at Darien High School, probably. Yeah, and I consider myself just like a very normal, modern, healthy adult, trying to work out a little, want to be a little more productive, want to be a little bit better of a parent, a husband, want to be more productive at work, have better workouts, eat healthier, sleep better, and I wanted to be a little better in everything I did. And at some point, alcohol didn't make sense in any of my progress goals in my career. And a really clear intersection of this to me was I did a Tough Mudder race with probably 25 colleagues in probably around 2012. And I was just stopping to drink. And I finished this race. I had to drive home. I was really thirsty. And we all went to the beer garden after. It was all alcoholic drinks. And I was staying there with all my colleagues. And I don't think I've ever even told this to you, but I was like, it would be amazing to have how are there not options here? And then I had that moment over and over and over again in professional settings, at sporting events, everyday sporting events, all the way to the Super Bowl. I was blown away that there weren't options for families and people who didn't want alcohol in so many occasions. And the idea kept germinating for me.
Yeah, because there's such a social connection, right, between alcohol and any kind of gathering. And I watch a lot of sports. I mean, always crack a beer when you're watching a game. So, Bill, I think you've described it as a penalty box experience, being in that situation. But you also called it the biggest life hack you ever discovered. So, through that experience, you identified a pretty big untapped market, right?
Yeah, truly hiding in plain sight. I never ever fashioned myself as an entrepreneur. I was at one of the world's biggest hedge funds locally. That was basically where I wanted to be in finance since I graduated high school. And to the point where I wasn't looking whatsoever. I thought I'd be there the next 20 years. I didn't even have a LinkedIn profile. And so that was my career, no ideas, nothing. And this started to really occur to me naturally in my life. I was about to get married, and I was looking at all these goals and all these different, I guess, like vectors or progress areas in my life from that I just said. And alcohol was a ceiling on all those things. And I stopped drinking for a month in 2013, and it was, as you just said, it was like the biggest hack I'd ever discovered. I was sleeping through the night. My workouts were great. My job was 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. at the desk, but also often carried 24 hours. And so I was sharp around the clock, and I loved that. But the problem was that, as you were saying, with the penalty box, like moderation was totally inaccessible and off the menu, even as much as 10 years ago. And that was definitely by design by the alcohol industry, and people wanted people drinking alcohol and didn't want a whole slate of alternatives. And that idea started to hit to me that like if moderation could only be accessible, if there were only options that tasted great and weren't stigmatized, there's probably a huge opportunity and big impact there.
So, John, we're kind of coming up on the story of the launching of this company. John, tell us when you first heard from Bill, or how you learned about Bill, because I think he placed a classified ad. Is that right? And what were you doing at the time?
Yeah, so I was in New Mexico, and I had been brewing at this small brewery called Second Street Brewery, but my family and I had 2 young kids. We were looking to go back up to be closer to family, better school area, public school. And so we had been looking for a little while, and I saw this ad that he had put out, or I think he put it out.
Where does one place a classified ad for a beer brewer?
It was a pretty dark time at this point. Like I'd gone from having like 200 brokers covering me on Wall Street to absolutely no one talking to me for months. And to the point, like my brother basically took me on a ski trip to get me out of the house at one point. And so that's kind of this like desperation point I was in when John intersected with my life.
Yeah, so I think Bill had an ad prior to me seeing it, or maybe I saw it and just glossed over it based on the content, because he modified that content over time and decidedly neglected to say that it was a non-alcoholic brewery ad. And so I think it said the most innovative sector in craft, and it was based in Connecticut. And I was, oh my goodness, love craft beer, love brewing, love Connecticut. And so called him up, and we met, casually over the phone, pre-video screens. He broke the news that it was a non-alcoholic brewery concept. But I got it. Yeah, no, he was like, just hear me out. Give me a second. Let me explain it. And, immediately kind of jogged my memory of like my father drinking that non-alcoholic beer. And I was like, oh yeah. And, I'd been doing inventory in bars for ages, and I knew it existed. I knew it was there. I knew it had a place. And also being in beer and craft beer specifically, that was so creative. Recognizing that, like, oh, yeah, duh. Why didn't anybody innovate here? That makes absolutely no sense. And so I thought Bill's idea was actually great, although, it took a little time to get around it, but it made sense.
And so you moved your family back here. You guys start getting going. The famous story in the garage. Tell us about kind of those early days.
Yeah, I guess even before we were in the warehouse and then went back to the garage, and but yeah, we basically didn't know each other. We'd met each other one time in person. I was pretty excited to have a friend, so John fielded.
Yeah, Bill was like, "Oh, cool, you're willing to talk." And he's like, "You know what? I could fly out to New Mexico. I could be there like tomorrow." I was like,
Little eager.
I told my wife, I was like, this guy, like, what is happening?
Yeah. And here's 500 emails. This is how we email in finance. Like, but it was probably like the perfect intersection of it. It's such an important moment in our journey, though, that like John specifically responded to it. And out of all those hundreds of people, it was specifically John. And the two of us, we like have found that out like over the next 2 to 3 years, that we have a lot of really complementary qualities and like what we're good at. Like different times we're big picture, different times we're better at granular stuff, but a lot of complementary skills and focuses. And like we got so lucky with our co-founding team that I see so many businesses get so wrong, where we ended up covering a lot of skills between the two of us, but I very often see co-founding teams where it's like 4 people with the very same skills. And so we immediately started to hit it off, homebrewing in an empty warehouse where I'd read every brewing textbook under the sun and thought I was so sharp on brewing. And that took me about like 10 minutes with John practically brewing that like I realized I knew almost nothing in that realm. And so I learned a lot about everything beer and brewing with John. And it also gave us a really good chance to talk about the foundation of the business. It's one of those really fortunate things also in our business is that we had such a long time frame to get to know each other and plan the foundation of the business and put together employee handbook manuals that we still use to this day, OSHA manuals. Valentine's Day 2018, we went to get our food safety certifications. And I've probably had random athletic stuff on like 5 of the last 6 Valentine's Days. Yeah, it's but like that foundational planning period we had of after we started working together, we had basically had, a year to 18 months before the brewery was ready to turn on and ready to go. And so I think that was really important and foundational. And then also time for us to like get to know our investors and stuff like that and find the right group of investors. I was so lucky to be just talking to one of our earliest angel investors in the back of the room before, but that amazing group of supporters who backed us when we didn't know anything about anything. And they've seen, I wrote 48 monthly updates and then quarterly updates for investors. And I think they've seen that development along the way where we got like a little sharper. Took us a long time to get sharp at all, I think. But so.
Yeah. Kind of on that topic was you beat me to my next question about kind of making that pitch to investors and starting to raise money. How much were you looking to raise, and were you both involved in those kind of meetings and outings and what have you with folks who were trying to get on board?
I got to listen to the pitch a lot in the office. I was the audience.
Yeah, we did have one room in the office until we got to 80 people. In terms of those meetings, I went about 3 months where I had a couple of really quick yeses from very good friends, and then about 40 no's probably, and for very good reasons. We made a very important early choice that we were going to do our own manufacturing, invest in the CapEx rather than contract manufacture, which contract manufacturing is the right choice for probably 95% of CPG brands, and manufacturing is a huge capital employer commitment, everything. And so rightfully so, a lot of investors were turned off by the manufacturing route we chose. We also were selling into we didn't have product yet for most of our investor meetings. The category was basically non-existent. There hadn't been any innovation in 30 plus years in this category. There was no exciting marketing. There was no momentum. So every reason why investors should say no, and most of them did for quite a while. But it was good because about 50 meetings in, we started to find a little momentum and learned a lot about ourselves in that process. And we have an amazingly sharp group of angel investors who I sat down at a lot of people's dining room tables or at restaurants with them, and they picked apart our business plan. And I'd say we learned so much in the course of that process too. By the end of the angel round, where we ended up raising $3 million to build that first brewery, we learned a lot in that process and had an amazing group of 70 really passionate angel investors who are our best supporters, ambassadors, and then supported us through a number of rounds after that and gave us great momentum.
Now, I think it was John I heard speaking a little bit about how there was a receptive community here in Connecticut that maybe were able to tap some resources here in the state that helped you guys get off the ground. What did that look like?
Yeah, I can definitely speak to that. And so in that, we were doing something pretty innovative, and one of our investors was like, have you tried reaching out to the state economic development department? And there was this program for biotech and tech companies, not open to us, but they were receptive and saw the positive impact and future of our company. And they let us into this great angel investor tax credit program that the economic development team, I believe, still has. And but the Connecticut economic development team was definitely part of the reason why we chose the state of Connecticut, and really helped us get support in raising that money as well.
Oh, that's interesting. Was it did you have like a caseworker type person that was helping you, or was it like a whole, how does that work when you go to that department?
Yeah, so we were ready to apply in about June, and it was like the latest in a year the state had ever passed a budget. So we had to wait like 5 months. And the day they passed the budget, I was basically on the steps of the Capitol with the packet of information. And but credit to them, they turned it around really quickly, and it was a great program. And the state of Connecticut has helped support us since. They've invested in us directly and also been a lender for us as well.
Very cool. Let's see. In a similar fashion that you had to kind of get your investors on board and get John on board, took some convincing and getting people to understand this market. You did quite a bit of work to educate the consumer. I think, well, I'm sure you have many anecdotes, but you were fielding emails from people when you guys first started direct to consumer. You were showing up at races and events and at your booth, and I think Bill, at one point you were pretending to be the customer yourself to attract people to the booth. What did that work look like to get people just to understand and have that moment where they're like, oh, of course we need this in the market?
Yeah, I think it's basically, as we were talking earlier, we decided it was basically half a product challenge and really more like nothing in the company works if it's not great beer, period. And John said that as we teamed up from day one. He was like, I'll team up. We can trial this as much as we want, but I'm never launching the company if it's not great beer, period. And that made it really easy to then go confidently sample people, because I knew as much rejection as we were getting that if I just got the beer in people's hands, it would be great beer. And that's how we tried to market it, is as an active lifestyle product, where previously it had been like corporate social responsibility, designated driving for recovering alcoholics, pregnant women, and all these like really niche penalty box use cases. And we wanted to make it for everyone, active lifestyle, all ages, and make it really exciting. And so, yeah, I did kind of do the calculus that could stand in a liquor store for hours and maybe talk to 10 people, or I could go to every town's local 5Ks and races and stuff, and you have 500 people going through the finish line in a half hour. And so I was putting myself out there a lot, trying to find people who are happy, thirsty, and open to tasting the beer. But yeah, that's kind of like the outside world half of the story. And then John was like basically running the whole breweries by himself too.
Now, I know you can't give away your proprietary secrets, but just tell us what makes this beer different from other non-alcoholic beers that were out there, and how did you go about tackling that challenge?
Yeah, so I think a lot of things make it different, but one of the core things is that it is all that we do. There are a lot of companies out there that make 1,000 different products, and we make one product. Done it, and fantastic job making it really, really well. So that time that we had spent, that 9 months where we didn't have to launch and didn't have to sell product and just got to innovate on the process, was hugely advantageous for us and obviously formative for the product and the process, and allowed us the creative freedom and bandwidth to explore the ingredients that we use and just utilizing them. So I think it's, selecting the ingredients. It's a unique process that we were able to develop over that period of time. Since then, it's the team that we have that has improved that process and continues to day over day. I think those are the biggest things, but just focusing on the ingredients, making sure they show up exactly, as you expect them to.
What was it like when you guys kind of started narrowing in on your formula and drinking this stuff and saying like, this is good?
Bill was excited pretty early on. And as he says, there were a couple false starts, like mistakes that we couldn't necessarily replicate at scale, which, it was nice to see that it was like a glimmer of hope in not a dark time, but a challenging time. It's really hard coming from making beer where 99% of the time you're scoring an A. And this was like, you're like D minus, F, almost every batch. And you're like, oh my goodness.
We had some like funny turns too, where like literally like poison was growing in the batches, or like at one point I ordered these like extremely sharp knives that we had to handle with enormous mitts, and like
Yeah, no, it was pretty comical. But I remember, we were probably 30 batches in, and we started tasting it, and I was like, oh, this tastes really good. I was like, I would actually drink this. And I remember we were bottling, I think I was bottling it on the front steps of the warehouse, because there was like a construction site and dust everywhere. And we were bottling this beer outside so Bill could take it to like Whole Foods in unlabeled brown bottles. And I was so disappointed that none of it was for us. But, it was really exciting to get to that point.
Yeah, that definitely sounds like kind of a moment where you're like, don't leave, I want to drink it. So let's see, we have so much ground to cover, but even since then, it hasn't even been that long. You guys, this has been such a quick journey. You've got the facility going in San Diego now. You do all your own manufacturing. Can you describe kind of the scale up process? It's kind of a big question, but there's just so many moving parts there. Like, how did you go about tackling that?
yeah, that we should definitely dive into the complexity of the modern breweries and operations. I think for as fluent as we were in finance, we definitely missed how numbers on the spreadsheet were going to show up in the real world in breweries. And it's really hard to scale physical assets, steel tanks at a business growing hundreds of % a year. And very often we had almost no lead time or predictability in that. We're doing our best, but for example, in that first year rounding the corner to the summer, a lot of our distributors had given their forecasts for the first 6 months of the year, and we'd put in the can orders, and we felt totally fine with the size of our Stratford brewery that was less than a year old. And then March came around and we'd outgrown it less than a year in, and like it's so expensive, takes so long to build another new brewery. We had just spent almost a year raising the first round, and so there was a lot to contemplate in that. And then so we had a great group of investors, and we got out in front of that, told them we were going to be shopping around breweries all over the country, and we eventually found one in San Diego. But then the scale of the brewery since then is pretty phenomenal too.
Yeah, I mean, from a insider's perspective, being in the manufacturing end, I think one of the most miraculous things is think back to the investors, the angel investors, who were able to make these things happen at a speed you can't really do in anything else. And so that was a huge, bonus and advantage for us to be able to do that, and to have the team behind us that's like, yeah, we believe in what you're going to do and what you say, and you're going to execute on it. So, and that was great, and allowed us to make some big decisions that are arguably very hard, but quickly. And we also had the team around us that was able to execute, perform all of that and scale that. So, great.
I mean, you must have been hiring like crazy. And you have how many employees now?
Yeah, we just had our monthly team update today with our full team that we do every month, and we have almost exactly 300 teammates now. And then we had a whole roster of people that are incredible people passing 5-year anniversaries, and I can't believe I've only known them for 5 years. Yeah, you should share some of the complexity of the new breweries, like.
Yeah, so we built this brewery in Stratford. It was the biggest brewery that I had ever worked in. I was going to do 5,000 barrels a year, and it was great. It was, what I was used to in New Mexico, very manual. Then we found this facility in San Diego when we were out west, and it was a 40,000 barrel a year brewery, so much, much larger and very overwhelming, but met some teammates out there who were like, oh yeah, this is kind of like run-of-the-mill brewery, do this in our sleep. So that was amazing. We grew that from 40,000 barrels a year to 160,000 barrels, just with remodeling, some grit and elbow grease, adding a bunch of tanks, modifying the systems, putting a new state-of-the-art canning line. Once we ran out of capacity there, which was pretty much every day after we opened it, we decided to look at the next home for our, biggest facility. So we kind of looked all over, but ultimately wound up looking mostly in Connecticut because we had this great team here in Stratford and wanted to keep them together and grow that team and grow the opportunities for that team. So the team, along with the state of Connecticut and the state that we were able to find, broke ground in Connecticut on our current Milford facility, which is about 150,000 square feet. And as of last April, we've got capacity there to do about 450,000 barrels of capacity. We're building again. But
You're building
Yeah.
again?
Yeah, that Milford facility, I think, was like 37 cement trucks of concrete arrived in one day, and 40,000 hours of stainless steel welding in the first phase of it, which we tripled the capacity of it after that. And so
and so shout out to the state again, but like to get the the DEP on board and to have them be really helpful and supportive, especially when you're in a water intensive industry, it's hugely helpful.
Wow, incredible. Let's see. So, I'm trying to decide which direction to go in because I have a couple of different things I want to ask you about. Let's talk about sort of the company. The company does a lot of giving back as well, right? So you're growing like crazy, but while doing all that, you're also have some programs. There's a grants program for trail maintenance. So let's get into this kind of your giving back philosophy. Want to hear about that?
yeah, we were really lucky to have a long time around homebrew jugs talking about what's important to us in the business, and came up with a few foundational philosophies. And part of it was to have a great team culture. Part of it was to have really good team ownership, so everyone had an owner's mentality, and it was really like merit based. And then part of it was to be really good to the communities we do business with, and like develop like real loyalty to where we sell beer. And we spent a lot of time thinking through how can we do all those objectives. So we came up with a Two for the Trails program, which is our environmental program, and then Two for the Team, which is an employee stock ownership program. So our Two for the Trails program is basically like we wanted this in from the start so that it was never like a board of directors decision and possible to, it's much easier if you just have these things in from the foundation. And so it was 2% of sales up to $2 million a year. And the goal is to basically enhance outdoor access for generations to come. And at first that was like a $5,000 check to Appalachian Mountain Club. And then the next year it was like 35,000. The next year it was like $100,000, and now it's $2 million every year and hundreds of grants. We have a committee that allocates that, and we've got some partners in this room tonight who do great work in Connecticut and far beyond. And we're up to about 600 grants now, $6.3 million donated. That'll be another $202 million this year probably. And then we have a community impact program too, where our teammates help John and I allocate a community impact budget too, which is really simple too. It's meant to enhance opportunity in the communities we do business in. So that's anything from brewing scholarships to education in communities, opportunity. It's mostly just like opportunity, opportunity, opportunity. And then on the team, like John and I from the start looked around the brewery, and our first teammates all the way up to our 300th teammates are all amazing people doing such hard work. And we wanted them to own a piece of what they were building every day. And we think that goes through in how they act, how like it takes the decision-making teammates make about the business to like a very long-term and very big scope. And so 2 for the team is basically 2% of stock is put aside in a pool for the team, and everyone gets an additional share in that pool every year. And so it's a really cool stock ownership plan.
We're just doing grab bag now, but the other thing I wanted you to talk a little bit about one of the things that Athletic is able to do is you'll have these what are they called, like special flavors. There's a term for it, and I'm blanking on it.
Pilot brews or
yes, right. And you're able to just have all this creativity in the work that you're doing. And I wanted to just like how does it feel to be able to kind of explore all of these options and all of these flavors and have fun with it? You guys had like a champagne beer for New Year's, and tell us a little bit more about kind of how far you've gone with that creativity.
Yeah, that's one of the most exciting things, and one of the things that Bill arguably like pushed me into right after we got our flagships going. And like, we need to hone in our process and try to figure out how to scale this thing. He's like, but I want this and I want this. He hadn't.
It's like, yeah, fine, hone away, but kind of a stout.
yeah, like he hadn't had a good beer in a year or years, and suddenly was like, oh my goodness, I can have this and I can have this and I can have this. So the free wave that you all are drinking, that was the first brew that came off of our pilot line, and so our process is such that, I mean, we have several processes now, but our process allowed us to investigate the entire beer portfolio with a new lens, non-alcoholic versions of all of the that people have enjoyed for so long. And that was super rewarding and actually really helpful in terms of attracting different brewers, because brewers were suddenly like, oh, I could be as creative as I was in alcoholic beer, it's non-alcoholic beer category. And so that was awesome. So at this point, we've got teammates on both coasts that are collaborating like with each other, with other teammates, and also kind of working on new ingredients and new projects internally to test out, like you said, the champagne of beers and raspberry espresso stout and things of all those. And like, it's just an incredibly rewarding opportunity for the team, but also for the consumers. And early on, Bill, I remember, bought this table, which is about the size of this stage, said, we're going to do e-commerce tonight. And, here we are trying to build a brewery.
My wife was so mad about this.
And I was like, okay, man, whatever. Like, we got to do this. We got to build a brewery. And so he's there packing packages, launched a website. And then all of a sudden, we started making these special beers, and the reception from community that we're learning was out there that we didn't know was out there prior to, suddenly hammering down Bill's door saying, why did you sell out so fast? And so it gave us the courage to create more, and it's been amazing ever since. And our brewers are coming out with 40, 50 different unique styles every single year that we're scaling up.
Maybe this is a weird question, but if you're, doing a lot of brewing and you've got to taste a lot of it, it's probably easier on your body that everything you're having to taste is not alcoholic, right? Maybe does that lend itself to some more creativity, possibly?
We probably have like a really interesting long-term experiment going on. Mm-hmm. There's basically one company in the whole competition sphere of the alcoholic industry that doesn't drink alcohol. That's going to be really funny over like a 10, 20 year period, like if there might be different results and stuff. But I'm truly customer number one of Athletic Brewing, and it like emerged from a need in my life. And I so often text John as I'm like trying a new beer that I've literally ordered myself on our website, and gotten shipped to myself. John, this is amazing. And like our team just like blows me away. And prior to that, like I'd been trying to order non-alcoholic beer from all over the world, anywhere I could get my hands on it. And it was all lagers, all disappointing, all bad marketing. And like, I think that's why you saw like when it was on e-commerce, like from day one, that people were so excited to, I think within 2 months of opening, we had a string of hot days, and John made a goes with like was a style of beer I'd never had before, with lime leaf and sea salt, I think.
Yep.
And it was just incredible. And I like was like calling our creative company. I was like, I need a label for this like tomorrow.
Yeah, no, and so this whole pilot program and e-commerce business was that was our tap room. Had a small tap room in Stratford, but it wasn't super busy, and so this was a way to get in touch with people around the country, around the world, who were interested in this category, get feedback on those brews that we're making. To this day, as vertical as we are, we've got this incredible customer experience team who's taking all the data from our consumers directly, bringing it to the brewers, and the brewers are tweaking based on the customers' preferences and things like that. So great little ecosystem.
And is it less complicated to ship direct to consumer if it's not an alcoholic product?
For the most part, yeah. And then kind of like everything with business, as you get bigger, you learn every regulation under the sun, and like business gets much more complicated in every area we do business. But for the most part, it is much easier to ship.
Yeah, there's like these added, like, not obviously this is not an easy business, but there's sort of like some little advantages to not having to deal with all of the rules around alcohol, right?
For sure. And when you come in as an outsider and you know nothing about the industry too, it's like really easy from a first principles perspective to just be like, why does everyone do it that way? Like that doesn't make sense. Yeah.
One thing I wanted to touch on, and then we'll open it for questions from the audience. The where did I? Oh, yeah. You've mentioned that actually the vast majority of your customers are not necessarily, people who don't drink alcohol. They're actually largely people who drink both. And so in cornering this market, it's more than just this slice of folks who don't drink at all. It's actually maybe the entire market of all beer drinkers. So tell me a little bit about kind of that, how that works with your customers, and what kind of how you kind of go about reaching customers with all interest, I should say.
Yeah, we've I know we both have thoughts on this. We've always tried to like take a very welcoming approach and very positive sum approach, and we've never been antagonistic towards the broader industry, and really just tried to bring more people to the table, more people to occasions. Moderation was totally inaccessible 10 years ago. Just giving people a really high quality option with some marketing support to make that choice also. And there's a lot of lapsed drinkers, a lot of people who weren't visiting the beer shelf at all, weren't going to bars and restaurants, who now search where to go and eat based on where Athletic is on our website. And so it is helping grow the industry. I'd say our most common use case is probably people who drink occasionally or one night a week, which the average adult drinks 0.1 times a week. So it's like the adult beverage world is missing a huge amount of people. And so we open up that occasion base to them. But some of our most common drinkers are people who drink alcohol one night a week or like one day a month. And now they can drink something 7 nights a week and feel good about it, get all the same flavors. Our beers tend to be about 25% the calories of an alcohol equivalent style. So it's got like nice macronutritional appeal. So, but we've also had the advantage of a lot of perspective on the industry too. And our alcoholic competition brings a lot of baggage into the 21st century, where the beer category is about 70% male. And like from day one, we've tried to be really inclusive in our marketing and cast a really wide tent and be really welcoming. And, we're not beer snobs. We try to make things as simple as possible. It's probably because I'm so simple, but overall, we're really trying to open the aperture more than anything. And so I think 80% of our customers probably do drink alcohol and like 20% don't, but we're really trying to be welcoming to anyone.
Yeah, no, my silly cliche saying is just that, for me personally, and I still drink normal or alcoholic beer, but, I drink a lot more beer and a lot less alcohol. I think it's just adding more occasions and being able to enjoy the beer at the end of the day and be with the family. Go. So yeah, it's just invited a lot of new opportunities for me, myself, and for, so I would assume.
Great. All right. Well, let's see if anyone out here in the audience has a question. Wow, we have a lot of hands right away. So we'll go right here in front.
Hey guys, this is awesome. This is awesome. Thank you. Two questions. One, what was your break even for your first plant? What did you think it would be, and what was it? And can you talk about your channel strategy early on? That was, I mean, there are a lot of reasons why incredibly successful, but I assume that making sure that you put your resources right places was one. Thanks.
Yeah, some of that we got lucky. Some of that we got right intentionally. So I'd say the break even on our first plant would have been way earlier as modeled, but then I started doing e-commerce, and then I'd also, something coming from finance, I'm great with financial statements, but the difference between financial statements and an operating model, one thing I really underestimated was that your model really only works when you're close to full utilization. And we went from being 25% utilized to 120% utilized in our facility and needing to go right to a new facility. And so we never had that opportunity to run the first facility to break even. And then in the middle of all that, e-commerce drove to such a big part of our mix that shipping the beer is more expensive than making it at the end of the day. And we were selling a ton of beer in what would be like FedEx zone 6, 7, 8, 9, all the way on the other part of the country. And so we were probably losing more money the more beer we made towards the end of that facility. And then that was a big part of why we geographically opened a place on the other side of the country as well. Saying it differently, at any point in that, we could have just not built the next brewery, run it at full capacity, and been immediately profitable. But us and our investors were all aligned that the window was open and we should be investing and expanding to this open window in the category. And then on channel, we've gotten this right in some places and wrong in some places. I think the e-commerce strategy was great to seed the market nationally and grow awareness. It was the best marketing we've ever done. We very lucky found a really receptive retailer locally in Whole Foods who, a very high-end natural channel leading grocery store that a lot of grocery stores, if you're doing well at Whole Foods, will follow what they do. And so we got really lucky kind of starting in a really premium retailer like that. A great example of that is like Estee Lauder in her autobiography speaks really well to that. And that's something we got right accidentally. We have gotten that wrong in other geographies too, where we've started in to value a place at so more competitive price point, more value, and then more premium retailers don't want it at that point too, which has been tough to have that in the wrong order in other places. So that's been some of our bigger challenges on the channel side. So that first plant, if we had kept it at, we would have broken even at 5,000 barrels, which is probably like 65,000 cases or so. It could have been break even at any point. We had a relatively small team and small footprint there, but we basically outgrew it and invested right in the next, and then had huge overhead on top of the company every time we started to build towards a new plant.
Thanks. You talk about there were very limited choices initially when you first came to market for moderation and everything. The industry has significantly changed now. You've got the mocktail industry ready to drink mocktails. You've got all the water choices. You've got kombucha choices. It's really expanded. The question is, do you see a difference because of your branding and positioning that your customer is different than the mocktail customer? And what do you see the implications for the trend lines across the business over the next couple of years?
Yeah. I would say there is some tie between like the sober shopper, call it, like some people like to shop the whole category. I'd say the vast majority of drinkers are beer lovers who love to drink great beer, and whether it is alcohol or not. And so, I think that's most of our volume, but it is exciting to see the non-alcoholic vertical grow in every non-alcoholic, basically, subcategory. There's great things going on: non-alcoholic spirits, non-alcoholic mocktails, everything. So, um, but there are a lot of brands in the category too. There's upwards of 150 non-alcoholic beer brands. I think over 1,000 SKUs fighting for shelf space. All the biggest multinationals have basically their lead products on the shelf now. Most of those have been there for 5 years, so um, they are huge products with big budgets, but also like have a small brand team running it within the big company. So there's all sorts of every new innovation product in our category basically launches to bigger distribution than we have, even though we're the number one product in the category. So that's a challenge and a frustration. But yeah, at the end of the day, as John said earlier, like we make one thing, we market one thing, and I think that specialization gives us a big advantage also.
Yeah, and we are exploring. I think we launched today on e-commerce. Not doing a plug here, but a malt-based cocktail, non-alcoholic. So we're playing in all sorts of things with.
Hi, guys. We saw that Poppy was bought yesterday by Pepsi and the growth of the beverage industry there. Curious how you're thinking about M&A, both internally for growth and then potential exits, in the near future.
Yeah, I think in general, we're non-alcoholic beer has gone from basically 0% of beer to 2% of beer now. It's almost 4% of beer in grocery. In certain retailers and channels, it is passing 10 and 20% now. So the future is really exciting for non-alcoholic beer, and we firmly believe that. And we think also Athletic leading that from the front is the way that really plays out. And so I'd say the two of us are having more fun than ever. And these days, I'd say the more we've gone against big publicly traded competition and seen them and how they operate, the more confidence we have we can actually just go head to head with them and win. And so that boosts our confidence a lot. And honestly, I don't think there's a ton of value to come from strategics at the moment. But there's I think the term exit is also evolving in the vernacular. Like the access to capital as private companies is so much better now that it's very possible to give people capital returns as a private company and have a long-term focus too. So it's a very long way of saying like all roads are open, but we are having more fun than ever and confident that like we are the ones who want to impart this change in the future of drinking.
How you doing, Bill and John? My name is Kellen Williams. I'm familiar with Chris Bailey and Wingate and what you guys have been doing. I'm in the sports sponsorship space. So kind of two questions. Where'd you come up with the name? And I know that you said that you went to a bunch of races and you were trying to meet people that obviously were, into their health, and you figured that they would want to, consume a non-alcoholic beverage. But then as you've grown over these last 5+ years, kind of, can you speak to the role that your sports sponsorship has played in the growth, particularly like I see that you guys, for instance, you're not just in the US, like Arsenal is a big partner that you guys have now, which I think is incredible to be in the Premier League. So can you just speak to that? And also, I'm just curious about the name.
For sure. In terms of the name was a very long road. We debated a lot, and we wanted something undeniably positive. That traveled across borders, was universally known and aspirational. And one of the biggest mistakes we'd heard from craft breweries was being too like regionally specific in their brand, and it didn't travel well. Places named after like a very local geographic landmark, for example. And so we wanted something that would be known anywhere and that we could market broadly. And also, like 70-80% of the population thinks of themselves as active or athletes or healthy in some way. It's about as wide a net as you can throw with anything. And, I think we're both the amateur embodiment of that, just enthusiastic people who get after it. And yeah, as you said too, Chris Bailey, the founder of Win State Sports Group. It's our sports agency. They have been for coming up on 7 years now. He walked in our door when we had no marketing budgets, and I was basically like, I'd known Chris from growing up, and I was like, wow, this sounds like a great idea. I was like, I just have no budget. He's like, don't worry about the budget. He's like, I'll earn the budget over time, and he's been amazing. We started with this plan to have, in terms of like concentric circles of what we wanted to accomplish in our sports reach every year. And so we started with like elite athletes and like endurance athletes, and then like built to like bigger and bigger verticals every year. And as you mentioned, we teamed up with Arsenal in the Premier League last year with a global beer of Ironman, and a number of others. We just signed a national music partnership with Live Nation to be their non-alcoholic beer. So that's the biggest music player. And so I've developed a lot of strategy around that. And yeah, athletics was a way for us to positively reach people in the world, and also a really easy bar call in a loud bar setting too.
Good evening. A couple of questions. One, how much did the last brewery cost? And once you're at a capacity there, where do you go next in terms of size and location of that brewery, which ties also into the second question, which is, I didn't know you were overseas, and how do you see that overseas expansion working?
Yeah, we probably have to take the fifth on the cost of the breweries. It's definitely a lot, and we have amazing patient supporters. But I think we've proven we can execute capital projects and be responsible with their capital. And also, we've gone about it a number of different ways too. We've done.
Yeah, I mean, so like before, so we had Connecticut, San Diego, built in Connecticut bigger, and it just so happens that we're doing that next build presently, but across the street in San Diego. So that team is going to be across the street. So building or renovating a facility that's about 5 times the capacity of our current San Diego facility. The street, phenomenal for our team and our group. So right now, that's the next project.
Yeah, and we are looking. We did in choosing that San Diego location. We weighed the benefits of that facility. But we did do a full national survey and talked to a number of state governments in that, and we do probably see a future where, as the category and company continues to grow, we probably do have more geographically relevant breweries in the middle of the country, and then hopefully overseas as well. So.
On the can, it says 0.5% alcohol. Can you explain how that works? You say non-alcohol, but I always see that in all non-alcoholic beers have that moniker for official beverage amount of alcohol that could be.
Yeah, that's actually a really interesting one in the industry that either of us could cover. So in the grocery store, basically, the reason the universal definition of non-alcoholic beverages is 0.5 is because almost all foods in the grocery store have some trace ethanol in them. Like Coke and Pepsi are about 0.2% probably, and bread, pasta, fruit, almost any juice, anything with a flavoring. So like flavored sparkling waters, all have alcohol in them. But almost nothing has no alcohol in it except 0.0 beer, ironically, which has been a very annoying marketing challenge in some places. Heineken has basically exported that to the world. There's a very specific law in the Netherlands that you can't use the words non-alcoholic or alcohol-free if it's made there. So like we can sell 0.5 beer into there, but if they want to export, it has to be under 0.05. And so Heineken has basically exported that language to the world and confused everyone, but it has like no real, we hear people all the time like proudly like saying, I only drink 0.0. I was like, you do not. Like everything you eat has alcohol, but it's at the end of the day, it's like, what do we want to spend our marketing money on? And so it's, but yeah, that's why we have 0.5, and we definitely could make 0.0 beer, and we have it. To get to 0.0 though, you just have to turn up the utilities like 10x. It takes like 10x the water, way more electricity. in processing, you do probably lose a lot of the like really delicate aromas and esters of fermentation. So, we talk about this all the time, as I'm sure you can tell.
Earlier in the conversation, you talked about this big decision about insourcing or outsourcing, whether that's domestic or even overseas. And I'm assuming you could have used contract manufacturers, and there would have been a range of advantages to that, but there had to be a reason that you didn't. And could you talk about that, what it meant for your early stage and what it means for going forward?
I could start. I think we're both type A kind of people who like to be in control of their destiny, and to have to make a phone call and hope that somebody picks up so that they can talk to somebody else about making a decision, really hard thing to do. And it's a really hard pill to swallow. And I think integrity is important for both of us and our entire team. And if and when there's a problem, mistake happens, we like to dig deep and correct it and move on. And it's really hard to do when you've externalized all of those relationships. So I think that's at the core of it for me.
Yeah, and really related to that too, from like an economic and chain of command type thing, we've seen some really wild market cycles in the last 6 years. COVID for sure. I think verticalizing has proven to be the right decision for us over and over again because we own so much of what goes on in our house, and there's so many things, especially in the current environment, where like different changes in costs of all different vendors just ripple through for contract producers, and you're just a price taker at the end. Like you don't own anything, like, and so for us, like we can hedge the actual commodities and then we own it from there on out, which is a really good spot to be.
And just one last thing, like access to capacity is ours, 100% ours. You don't have to fight for somebody else's tank space. And there's a market that.
Now see your questions. So you've got, okay, last question.
Quick question. Congratulations. Phenomenal story. Has Harvard Business School written you up yet?
Yep.
Right, that's a yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. This has been a great conversation. Thank you, guys. There's, I believe, a little bit of beer in the back. Yes, round of applause.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, this is great. And I'm going to go through my other thank yous. Thanks to the Ferguson Library for their hospitality and support. I'd like to mention in particular CEO Alice Knapp, and thanks to Chris Vincent, Barbara Buck, and Dennis Sweeney. Again, thanks to presenting sponsor CBIA. At the Connecticut Mirror, thanks to our publisher Bruce Putterman, executive editor Beth Hamilton, director of revenue Robert DeGioia, Claire Dignan, our director of philanthropy Irene Mackey, Gabby DeBenedictis, Chris Nilsson, and the producer of this series, Harriet Jones. You can read all of the Connecticut Mirror's journalism at ctmirror.org, and I recommend you go there and read more. Thank you all so much for joining us, and have a great evening. Come to the next one.